Done? Okay. Okay. So with discussion of volcanic eruption, we have completed endogenic processes. In endogenic processes, we are having two important processes. One is diastropism and catastrophism. And within diastropism, we are having epirogeny and orogeny. And in sudden movement process or in the catastrophic processes, earthquakes, tsunamis and volcanic eruptions. Now put the heading exogenic. Exogenic geomorphic processes. Exogenic geomorphic processes, very important. Exogenic geomorphic. What is the meaning of exo? Exo meaning outside, it's good. Genic meaning genesis. Genesis meaning formation, right? So exogenic, exo meaning here outside. Outside. Genic meaning genesis. Genesis. So process, listen carefully. Processes that takes place outside the earth or above the earth surfaces we call exogenic. Exogenic geomorphic processes. Add one line. Processes, geomorphic processes that takes place on the earth surface. On the earth surface. Geomorphic process that takes place on the earth surface are known as exogenic geomorphic processes are known as exogenic geomorphic processes right? Exogenic geomorphic processes. Full stop. Now write down types of or classification of exogenic geomorphic processes. Types of exogenic geomorphic processes. And there are four types. So first one is weathering process. Weathering geomorphic process or weathering. Second one is mass movement process. Third one is or you can write here A and B and C. Third one is erosional process and D. Fourth one depositional process. Depositional process, erosional process, mass movement process and weathering process. There are the four types of processes, right? Very important. So now we'll discuss one by one. First put the heading weathering. And this is very important term. So you always listen about this term in the newspapers, magazines, in common languages also while speaking, right? Weathering. What is the meaning of weathering? Yes, breakdown of larger rocks or minerals into small pieces. The general definition, the simple definition. So breakdown of larger rocks or minerals into small pieces we call weathering. Just listen first. Suppose this is the large rock or any mineral, So here it breaks. Listen carefully. It breaks into small pieces. So that we call weathering, right? Just listen. Here weathering meaning, so breakdown of larger rocks or minerals into small pieces. That we call the weathering. So which factors causes weathering here? Right? It can be climatic factor. Just listen. climatic factor, or it can occur by biological factor, or it can occur by chemical factor. Chemical factor. Listen carefully. So the weathering means breakdown of the rocks can take place by any physical factor or climatic factor. Here physical factor, nothing but here climate. Biological factors, nothing but here living organisms. Just listen, living organisms, or you can say by any chemical factors, that is chemical reactions. Chemical reactions. Right, just listen. So here weathering meaning breakdown of larger rocks and minerals into small pieces is known as weathering. And based on, listen carefully, based on the weathering factors, we are having three types of weathering: physical weathering, biological weathering, and chemical weathering. If weathering causing factors are climate or temperature or pressure, we call physical weathering. If the weathering causing factors are living organisms, we call biological weathering. If weathering causing factors are chemical reactions, we call chemical weathering. You got this point? And this is the general definition. And when you give definition, you have to draw such diagrams. And this is very simple diagram, but it gives lot of meaning, right? So this diagram should be drawn in your exam, right? Figure weathering. Right? So write down the definition of weathering. Have you taken the diagram? Okay. Write down. Breakdown of larger rocks and minerals, into small pieces. Larger rocks and minerals into small pieces. Breakdown of larger rocks and minerals into small pieces. Is known as weathering. Breakdown of larger rocks and minerals into small pieces is known as weathering. This is a very simple definition, but you have to give another definition in the exams. So now I will explain the definition, so that you have to write in your exam, because it's a very simple definition, and for simple definition you will get simple marks. To get good marks, you have to write the good definition. Write down another definition for weathering. Write down another definition. Write down. So mechanical disintegration and chemical decomposition of larger rocks and minerals. Very important point. Listen. So mechanical disintegration and chemical decomposition of larger rocks and minerals by the action of various factors like climate, comma, living organisms and chemical reactions is known as weathering. Very important point. So your weathering meaning And if you write this definition in exam, you will get very good marks. So rather than writing like because everyone write this definition, right? Breakdown of larger rocks into small pieces known as weathering. So most of the people write the same definition and they will give the same marks. And if you write such definitions like this here, mechanical disintegration and chemical decomposition of larger rocks and minerals into small pieces by the action of climate, living organism and chemical reactions is known as weathering. They no need to buy it also. The same diagram, just I am explaining with the diagram only. So that's why your exam, this UPSC is very simple if you know the strategy, how to prepare and what to prepare, right? So because what the students will do, they will start by-hearting it without diagram, and that's why geography becomes difficult for many students because those prepares the geography without diagrams. You might be observing from my first class, I am discussing everything with the diagrams only. For simple concept also I am explaining with diagrams, and that's why the geography becomes very simple, right? Okay. So this is the definition of weathering. Now put the heading types of weathering. Types of weathering. Types of weathering. Right? Types of weathering. Just write down one line, common line. Based on, so are you putting the page numbers right? Otherwise you get confused later. Page numbers, good. Based on factors based on factors of weathering, there are three types. Based on factors of weathering, there are three types of weathering. Based on factors of weathering, there are three types. There are three types in weathering. Full stop. They are first one is physical weathering. Second one, chemical weathering. Third one, biological. Second put biological here. Anyone you can take any. We have to explain all the three only. Biological weathering. So physical weathering, chemical weathering, biological weathering. Physical, chemical, biological, or physical, biological. Numbers are not important. They will not ask which is the second, which is the third. They never ask what is biological weathering, what is chemical weathering, that they will ask. So physical weathering, chemical weathering and biological weathering, right? First put the heading physical weathering. First one is physical weathering. Listen, so physical weathering, there are three types of weathering. First is physical, second chemical and biological. Physical weathering meaning if the climate is the main factor of weathering, then we call physical weathering. Physical weathering meaning if the breakdown of the rocks and minerals takes place by the action of climate in general and temperature in particular, that we call physical weathering. First listen carefully. So physical weathering meaning, suppose, just listen, in normal areas, in normal warm areas and in cold snow covered areas or snow covered cold areas. Okay, just listen. In normal warm areas during the daytime and during the night time. When you compare daytime and night time, so during which time there will be more temperature? Daytime. And because of more temperature, your rocks, listen carefully, rocks will expand. Rocks expands during the daytime, right? Expansion of rocks. Expansion. So rocks expand in the daytime, and in the night time rocks will contract. Not only rocks, even minerals also. Rocks and minerals contracts or contraction. So contraction takes place in the night time because of low temperature. And in the daytime because of the more temperature. So expansion of the rocks takes place. So expansion of the rocks in the daytime and contraction of the rocks in the night time. That makes the rocks weaker. and immediately in one day the rocks will not break. After many days, many years, the rocks becomes soft because of expansion, contraction. This expansion becomes severe or maximum in the summer time, and contraction becomes maximum in the winter time, and winter summer comes every year, right? And because of that, rocks will become soft, and after many years, 10 years or 20 years, depending on the type of the rock. If it is igneous rocks, it takes 30-40 years also. If it is a sedimentary rocks, within 5-6 years also it can break, depending on the that type of the rock. If the rocks are soft, then that expansion contraction will be faster. If the rocks are igneous rocks, so the contraction expansion will be lesser, because they are very hard rocks. Igneous rocks are very hard rocks, and sedimentary rocks are very soft rocks, right? So this contraction expansion makes the rocks weaker, and that rocks will break into smaller pieces. That we call physical weathering. You got this point? Physical weathering. One more point, just listen. If suppose in snow covered areas, suppose this is the rock, this is the rock, just listen. It's a rock, not Bengampalli mango, right? Suppose this is the rocks. Just I am giving simple diagram here, rocks, right? Listen. So these are the rocks, and in between, listen carefully, in between these are the rocks. Rock, right? So in the night time, the water will freeze and converts into ice. Here water freeze when converts into ice in the night time. So in the night time, the water will freeze. Very important. Water will freeze. Okay. So here also the water will freeze. Right. So water freezing takes place in the night time, and daytime the water melts and again it flows as a water, right? Or it flows in the form of water, right? And in the night time the water will freeze into ice. So water will freeze into ice in the night time. Water will freeze into ice in the night time, and the ice again melts and converts into water in the daytime, right? In the daytime, so water, this ice is the solid, and that process we call thawing meaning melting, thawing. So this thawing process takes place during the daytime, and this water converts into ice. That process we call freezing, and freezing process takes place in the night time. And that freezing and thawing, this is a continuous process again in the snow covered areas, and that freezing and thawing makes the rocks weaker, and after many years the rocks will break into small pieces, and that we call again physical weathering only, because it's due to temperature only, and that climate, right? Just for example, thawing and freezing. ये देखो चिकन आ रहा है यहाँ पे, thawing and freezing of rocks. Freezing in rocks, thawing and freezing in rocks. Okay, listen. So during the daytime, night time, the water will freeze into these gaps, right? And that gap will be filled, and that's why that rocks will become soft. And again, daytime, that ice melts and flows as the water. Again, the water freezes into ice, like it's a continuous process, thawing, freezing, and that makes the rocks weaker, and this rock already broken into small pieces because of that only, right? And that we call the, what kind of weathering? Physical weathering. So physical weathering can take place in the cold areas, or physical weathering can take place in the warm areas, right? And here weathering meaning breakdown of the rocks into small pieces, right? You got this point? Okay, write down physical weathering. Have you taken the diagrams? Okay, take it fast. or take it fast. Physical weathering, that normal areas and snow covered cold areas. Okay, just write down below normal warm areas, or you can write a point wise also. First point, write down. In normal warm areas, in normal warm areas, in normal warm areas, in normal warm areas, during daytime, during daytime, during daytime, due to more temperature, due to during daytime, due to more temperature, during daytime, due to more temperature, rocks expands, rocks expands, rocks expands. During daytime, rocks expands, and during night time, and during night time, due to low temperature or lesser temperature, due to lesser temperature, due to lesser temperature, due to lesser temperature, lesser temperature, rocks contracts, rocks contracts, rocks contracts, rocks contracts, contracts, full stop. This expansion and contraction of rocks, this expansion and contraction of rocks, this contraction and expansion of rocks is a continuous process. This expansion and contraction of rocks is a continuous process. Continuous process. This expansion and contraction of rocks is a continuous process. Continuous process. This expansion and contraction of rocks is a continuous process, which leads, which makes the rocks weaker, which makes the rocks and minerals 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 weaker, and causes, and which makes the rocks and minerals weaker, and eventually meaning finally, eventually causes their breakdown, eventually causes their breakdown, eventually causes their breakdown, eventually causes their breakdown, breakdown, right, full stop. Next point, next paragraph, or below snow covered cold areas, write down. In cold areas, in snow covered cold areas, in snow covered cold areas, during night time, during night time, during night time, during night time, due to very less temperature or due to minimum temperature, due to very less or minimum temperature, due to less or due to less or due to very less or minimum temperature, due to very less or minimum temperature, due to very less or minimum temperature, water freezes into ice, water freezes into ice, water freezes into ice, water freezes into ice, and during daytime, due to more temperature, and during daytime, due to more temperature, ice melts and converts into liquid water, 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 is known as thawing, or melting, is known as thawing or melting, is known as thawing or melting, right, full stop. Freezing of water into ice, freezing of water into ice, freezing of water into ice, and thawing meaning melting, thawing of ice into liquid water, thawing of ice into liquid water are the regular processes, are the regular processes, processes, comma, this process makes the rocks and minerals weaker. These processes makes the rocks and minerals weaker. These processes makes the rocks and minerals weaker. These rocks makes the this process makes the rocks and minerals weaker, which eventually breaks into smaller pieces. Which eventually means finally breaks into smaller pieces. Which eventually breaks into smaller pieces is also known as physical weathering. Right? Is known as physical weathering. Very important point. Is known as physical weathering. They'll ask the question. So, which processes are involved or which processes are associated with physical weathering? There are 4 processes are associated. Which are the 4 processes? Contraction, expansion, contraction, freezing and thawing. They are the 4 processes. Just add one note. Following 4 processes are associated. Following 4 processes are associated with physical weathering. Following 4 processes are associated with physical weathering. Right? That one, they are, first one is expansion, second one contraction, third freezing and fourth thawing. So, your expansion takes place during the daytime and contraction during the night time, right? Freezing during the night time and thawing during the daytime. These 4 processes are associated with physical weathering. Very important. Put a double star, most important. 4 processes. Next one is, put the heading chemical weathering. Chemical weathering. Chemical weathering. Chemical. The name itself says that chemical processes, it leads to weathering, right? Chemical process leads to weathering. Just add one common line first. So, weathering that takes place by chemical processes or reactions, weathering that takes place. Sorry? Yes, SLOW, slow. I got, write down. Weathering that takes place by chemical processes or reactions. Weathering that takes place by chemical processes or reactions is known as chemical weathering. Right? Full stop. Okay, listen first. So, chemical weathering means that takes place by chemical processes or chemical reactions. In that one process, just listen first. So, we are having very important process called carbonation. Listen first, carbonation. Then we are having oxidation. Then we are having hydration. Listen. So, carbonation, oxidation, hydration. So, your carbonation meaning, just listen. For example, this is the water body, right? And this water body consists rocks and even water also. Suppose this is the rock that present in the water body, and this water body absorbs atmospheric CO2, right? It absorbs atmospheric CO2, and here it consists the water. This H2O reacts with this CO2 and produces carbonic acid that we call H2CO3. It's a carbonic acid, right? Carbonic acid. And this carbonic acid, it's a weak acid. It's a weak acid. Weak carbonic acid, weak acid. And this H2CO3, it easily melts. or you can say it dissolves in the water. And when this this carbonic acid, or when this bonds breaks between this hydrogen and carbon, so H plus ions releases. When this acid dissolves, so H plus ions increases, and with increase in H plus ions, listen carefully, so pH value of the water decreases. With increasing H plus ions, pH value decreases, and when the pH value decreases, the water becomes more acidic. And remember, so this carbonic acid, it easily melts these rocks. It easily melts the rocks. The rocks easily melts under the influence of this carbonic acid, and that breakdown we call the carbonation. Or here formation of carbonic acid is also known as carbonation, and that formation of carbonic acid leads to breakdown of the rocks. That process we call carbonation, right? So it's a carbonation. Next, one more point, just listen. And here when this iron, so we call Fe. When this Fe reacts with oxygen, so in the presence of water, it leads to formation of rust. And that rust, when the rust develops on the surface of rocks or metals, and that expansion of the rust and contraction will make the breakdown of the rocks and minerals also, or metals also. You might have observed about that rust. If you keep the metals in a single place, after many years or many days, so there will be a rust on that metal. And if you keep like that only, it will break easily after many years. You might be seeing this one. Like we will keep some metals in the houses, and the rust will be developed on that, and it becomes very weak. So that development of rust or formation of rust is known as oxidation. Oxidation meaning, so here the oxides that we call CO2, carbon dioxide. Oxide meaning oxides of iron will develop. That oxide of iron we call the rust. When the rust will develop, that causes the breakdown of rocks or metals or minerals. So that process we call oxidation. And hydration meaning, just listen. So hydration meaning here, so when the rocks remains in contact with water for long duration, so their composition or their bond structure will change, and they converts into other type of rocks. And while converting, even sometimes they can break also by under the influence of water. The water is the main factor here. If the water causes the breakdown of the rocks, that we call hydration. And even one more point, if suppose this is the slope area, right? This is the slope area, and in this slope area, when the rainfall takes place, when the heavy rainfall occurs, that rainwater flows from this slope area, right? The rainwater, it flows from the slope area, and if any rocks found in this region, right, and when this running water, it exerts the force on this rock, this upper part of the rocks will be broken out, it will be split, because when this rocks remains in contact with the water, when the water keeps on hitting the that rocks, so the rocks will break into smaller pieces. That is also known as hydration, and you might have observed this one. So when the rocks will found, even in the waterfalls also, when the water falls from the high altitude, and the rocks which present at the bottom of that waterfall, that rocks will break, right, because of the pressure or the force we call the hydraulic pressure. Due to hydraulic pressure, that rocks will break. That is also known as hydration, right? Hydration, oxidation, and carbonation. You got this point? Okay, write down first carbonation. Write down. Water bodies absorbs atmospheric CO2. Water bodies absorbs atmospheric CO2 and forms carbonic acid. Water bodies absorbs atmospheric CO2 and forms carbonic acid. Full stop. This acid causes the formation of this acid causes the breakdown of soft sedimentary rocks causes the breakdown of soft sedimentary rocks, causes the breakdown of soft sedimentary rocks, is known as hydration, is known as hydration, is known as hydration, is known as hydration, right, is known as hydration. Sorry, carbonation, known as carbonation, right, is known as carbonation, is known as carbonation, right, full stop. Next point, next point. Okay, listen, carbonation. And just listen, so even the rocks, just listen carefully, the rocks, those consist iron, many rocks consist iron, and that iron containing rocks will undergo the oxidation. Oxidation meaning here the iron reacts with the oxygen and forms the iron oxide in the presence of water, that we call oxidation. Write down. Iron containing rocks, iron containing rocks, iron containing rocks, iron containing rocks reacts with, iron containing rocks reacts with oxygen, oxygen, reacts with oxygen, iron containing rocks reacts with oxygen, and in the presence of, iron rocks reacts with oxygen in the presence of water, and causes, reacts with oxygen in the presence of water and causes the formation of, rust, causes the formation of rust, that is iron oxide. So iron oxide also we call rust, iron oxides, rust, full stop. Expansion of rust leads to, breakdown of, rocks and minerals, is known as oxidation, right, full stop. Next one is hydration, write down. When a water or mineral remains in contact, when a rock or mineral remains in contact, with water for longer duration, comma, its chemical bonds changes, and becomes a weak material, which further splits or breaks into small pieces, very important point, right. Okay, so this is about hydration, oxidation and carbonation. These are three types of chemical weathering, very important point. Third one, biological weathering. The name itself says biological weathering, meaning weathering caused by biological agents. Biological agent meaning living organisms, right? Okay, just listen first. Suppose, what is the meaning of flora? Flora meaning plants. Okay, listen. So here the big flora or big plants or big trees like banyan tree or neem tree. When the banyan tree or neem tree, just listen first. Okay, listen. So the banyan tree or neem tree, so their roots will grow up to maximum depth, and their growth of roots also causes the breakdown of the rocks. They break the rocks and the roots will grow. So that much the roots will be stronger here, right? So the rocks will break. 1 minute. So these are the rocks, right? So they breaks the rocks, and the roots will travel at even to the higher depth. These are the rocks. It's a rock, right? The single rock will be broken into small pieces after many years, not immediately, because the tree itself takes many years to grow, right? And while growing, the roots keeps on going depth, and that's why here the rocks will break into smaller pieces, right? The rocks will break into smaller pieces. So that is also one of the best example for biological weathering. And one more example, listen. So here the human or anthropogenic activities, so it can be agriculture, or it can be mining activities, or it can be quarrying activities, it can be constructional activities like road construction, dam construction, activities. Under construction, it can be road construction or any building construction, right? And even any dam construction. So here again human is the living component, and most of the farmers, to make their agricultural land plain and more productive, they will break the rocks and they will remove the rocks also, and they will break and they will make the small pieces, right? And even the leveling of the agricultural land also causes the breakdown of the rocks. And mining, you know, the where in mining most of the rocks will be broken into smaller pieces. And the quarrying, meaning the blasting of larger rocks with the help of dynamites. When with the dynamite, when the rocks are blasted, so the rocks will break into small pieces, right? All they comes under like organism, because here human also organism. And this plant that we call flora plant, it is also living organism, right? And one more important point, listen. So when the movement of big animals, so movement of big animals, like it can be elephants or it can be rhinos, right? Big animals, when the animals will move continuously in the forest areas, the many rocks will come in their contact, and because of their friction, again the rocks will break into small pieces. The rocks will not break in a single day. So suppose here the rock which already became weak because of expansion and contraction because of the climate, and if the rocks became soft, and when the big animals like elephants, when they keeps their legs on that soft rocks, that also breaks into small pieces because of that heavy weight, right? So that also we call here biological weathering. Biological weathering meaning breakdown of rocks by living organisms. Here bio meaning life, and life includes flora, life includes fauna, life includes even humans. All together we call life. So flora, plants, and fauna, animals, and humans. All together we call the life. And if the weathering takes place by these living organisms, so we call biological weathering. What is point? Okay, write down few lines. If weathering takes place by living organisms, weathering takes place by living organisms, then it is known as biological weathering. 1 minute. If weathering takes place by living organisms like plants, add one word, what I have mentioned. If weathering takes place by living organisms like growth of plants, comma, movement of animals, movement of big animals, and what I have written, just 1 minute. If weathering takes place by living organisms like growth of plants, movement of animals, and anthropogenic activities, If weathering takes place by living organisms like growth of plants, comma, movement of animals, and anthropogenic activities, is known as biological weathering. Biological weathering. So that you have to write in the means. But in simple meaning, if they ask the question, what is in interview, what is biological weathering? Simple. Weathering caused by living organisms we call biological weathering. Simple. So when the people will ask one line answer, when they expect one line answer, then you have to tell weathering caused by living organisms we call biological weathering. But in means, if you write this much, you will not get the good mark. That's why you have to add all these masalas, right? Growth of the plants, movement of the animals, anthropogenic activities, all together we have to call the biological weathering, right? So if you want, you can take this diagram. You need this one? Already you have taken. Good, very good. Just you can write one more point here under biological weathering only. Growth of big and thick, growth of big and thick, roots of growth of big and thick, roots of big plants like banyan tree, big plants like banyan tree, comma, neem tree, etc. Causes the breakdown of soft rocks, causes the breakdown of soft sedimentary rocks, causes the breakdown of soft sedimentary rocks, right? Okay, full stop. So this is about the biological weathering, and with this we have completed all the three types of weathering. Now the question arises, what is the essential or what is the need of weathering, or what is the significance of weathering? Yes, anyone? Any two examples or any two significances? Yes, I am expecting answer from online students also. What is the significance of weathering? Why we need weathering, or what is the essential of weathering? Whether it's a positive process or negative process. Okay. Use of rocks in construction. Okay, good. Okay, very good. Soil formation, nice. Because without weathering, the soil will not form, and soil is must for growth of plants and even for agriculture also. Very good point. Soil formation. Then, yes, online students, what is the significances of weathering? Okay, listen. So, weathering meaning, first basic concept is breakdown of rocks and minerals into small pieces. When the rocks and minerals breaks, then only the soil will form, right? The first important significance is soil formation. Second significance, listen. So when the rocks will break into small pieces, listen carefully. If suppose this is a large rock, and if the large rock breaks into small pieces, or if the cracks develops in rocks, and then only the water will filter inside the earth. Just listen. If this earth surface, this is the earth surface, and when the rainfall occurs, if it is a single rock, the water will not percolate. The most of the water will flow on the surface only. And if there is a crack only, then only the water will percolate, or the water will filter, and that leads to formation of the groundwater, right? So the groundwater will form. So only when if there is a weathering, and because of weathering only, so you will find some cracks, and that cracks will develop in the rocks because of the weathering, and without weathering the rocks will not break or the cracks will not form, and even the groundwater is also not possible, and the water also will not flow inside the earth. The water flows inside the earth only when there is a cracks, and that crack occurs only when there is a weathering, right? And crack meaning, in earthquake also we have discussed crack. That crack is not that is different. That is very big cracks, very big fractures. That is in the plate tectonics. But here fracture meaning small cracks. But here within the rocks, that is within the plates. Within the plate meaning very big one, very larger one. But you see within the rocks meaning very small cracks. And that small cracks is essential. So for formation of groundwater and even for movement of the water also. Just listen carefully. If suppose a farmer like he digs the well, or even if due to the bore well, if suppose he puts the bore well here or the well, so even though if there is no water, the water will come from the other source also, and he gets the water from his bore well, right? So the water will get, and that like to get the water, so there should be movement of the water. There should be movement of the water, and for movement of the water, there should be cracks, right? Then only the farmers will get the groundwater. If suppose when the borewells or the wells are digged, right? When the wells are digged, so that well will get the water from surrounding areas, and to collect the water, there should be some cracks inside the rocks. Then only that well will get the water, right? And here weathering is very important. So because by the weathering only, the rocks will convert. Listen carefully. These are the rocks, and the rocks will break into smaller pieces. That helps in formation of soil, and the rocks will help in formation of cracks. That helps in percolation of water or filtration of water. And weathering only helps for the easy mining. So we can easily extract the minerals only when there is a weathering. And without weathering, the rocks will not break into small pieces, and it's very difficult to extract those minerals or extract those rocks. You got these points? Just write down some significances. Write down. Weathering is very essential. Weathering is very essential process. Weathering is very essential process due to their following significances. Weathering is very essential process due to its following significances. Right. First significance, soil formation. Write one line here. Rocks are the major parent materials. Rocks are the major parent materials in soil formation. Rocks are major parent. What do you mean by parent material? Parent meaning original, right? We call now our parents. Parents meaning those gave birth to us. And soil parent, rock. Rock is the parent of soil, right? So rocks are parent materials for soil formation. Full stop. Black soil, in that same point, black soil forms by igneous rocks. Black soil forms by or from igneous rocks. Very important point. Black soil forms from igneous rocks. Okay, listen. So if you get the question, so what is the reason why is Deccan Plateau having more black soil? If you get the question, why Deccan Plateau having more black soil? So this area, it mostly having the black soil. So because it having hard igneous rocks. So this area having hard igneous rocks, that's why we are having black soil. Mostly Gujarat, Maharashtra, Northern Karnataka, some part of Telangana, it having the black soil. And the rest of area we are having here red soil. So almost it's a red soil. And the main reason for red soil is the iron. So mostly we are having here iron, and that's why we are having red soil. So that is, these are the concepts. But the students will by heart. So if you by heart, it is very difficult to clear the exam. If you by heart, you will forget also, no, in few days. But if you know the concept, you will not forget. Now it's very easy to remember. So why the black soil will found in this region? The black soil will found in this region because of black igneous rocks, right? Black igneous rocks, and we have discussed multiple times. So here we are having because of the flood basalt meaning very less viscous magma, it spreaded and it led to formation of this plateau, Deccan Plateau region. And here the igneous rocks undergoes weathering and leads to formation of black soil. And here iron undergoes weathering and leads to formation of red soil, right? Red soil. And here iron undergoes weathering and leads to formation of red soil. And igneous rocks, undergoes weathering and leads to formation of black soil. You got this point? That's the first one, soil formation. Second one, just write down. Formation of cracks. Formation of cracks in the rocks. Formation of cracks in the rocks. Formation of cracks in the rocks. Write down. Cracks develops in the rocks. Cracks develops in the rocks due to weathering activities or due to weathering process. Due to weathering process. Right? Full stop. It helps in the same point. It helps in the percolation. It helps in the percolation or infiltration. It helps in the percolation or infiltration. Percolation or infiltration of rainwater. It helps in percolation or infiltration of rainwater. Full stop. That is second point. Third point. So formation of groundwater or aquifers or groundwater. Write down. Weathering plays very significant role in the formation of aquifers or groundwater. Weathering plays very significant role in formation of aquifers or groundwater. Aquifers or groundwater. Right? Full stop. These are meaning aquifers and groundwater. These are one of the major source of fresh water. Here aquifers and groundwaters are one of the major source of fresh water. Then one of the major source of fresh water. Full stop. That is point number 3. Point number 4. Okay, listen. So we have discussed about metamorphism. What is the meaning of metamorphism? What is metamorphism? So transformation of rock from one type to another type, or from one one type of rock to another type of rock, we call metamorphism. From one state to another state, like limestones converts into marbles, sandstones converts into quartz, right? That is because of temperature, these things only, right? Modification. That is also weathering only, right? Just write down. Metamorphism of rocks. Metamorphism of rocks takes place. Metamorphism of rocks takes place by weathering. Metamorphism of rocks. Metamorphism meaning transformation from one structure to another structure, or one state to another state, or from one condition to another condition, right? So metamorphism of rocks takes place. Metamorphism of rocks takes place by weathering processes. So these are the significances of what? Weathering. Significances of weathering. It's a very important topic, weathering. Significances of weathering. Right? Okay. So with this we have completed the first topic. First you can say exogenic process, that is this one weathering. Now put the heading mass movement. Second process, mass movement. Mass movement. What is the meaning of mass movement? Yes, very good. Movement of sediments. Very good. Nice. Listen. So here suppose this is a mountain area or any hills, right? So here the mass movement meaning the movement of sediments and rocks also. For example, this is the rock. and soil and even so it's vegetation, right? So the movement of rocks and soil and vegetation. Remember, rocks, soil, vegetation, in simple words we call VSR. So vegetation, soil and rocks. They slides down from one place to another place, generally from the hills areas or mountain areas. So in simple meaning, movement of mass meaning here sediments or rocks, or soil meaning generally sediments only, soil. And the small rocks we call pebbles. Pebble is a part of again sediment only. We have discussed that sediment consists 4 types of particles: clay, silt, sand and pebbles. Pebbles are small piece of the rocks, and the large one we call the rocks only. The pieces we call debris or we call sediments, right? The main difference between this sediment, just listen, sediment and debris and rocks. So rocks meaning very larger one, and the small medium pieces we call debris, very small pieces we call sediments, right? And the micro piece we call the clay, silt, sand and sediment, pebble, debris and rocks. You got this point? So you have to remember, so when the debris or when the sediments or when the rocks will travels or the movement takes place, that we call mass movement. You got this point? And within mass movement, just listen, within mass movement we are having two important types. One is slow mass movement and second is sudden mass movement. That movement can take place slowly or suddenly, right? Slow mass movement, listen first, slow mass movement, and second one is sudden mass movement. Slow mass movement and sudden mass movement, right? So here slow mass movement, listen, within slow mass movement there are two types. One is creep and solifluction. And within sudden mass movement there are four types. So first one is earth flow, second one is mud flow, third one is landslides, and fourth one is avalanches. Very important one. Just listen. So we are having here two important types of mass movement. One is slow mass movement and sudden mass movement. Listen. Slow mass movement and sudden mass movement. Within slow mass movement there are two types, right? One is creep and solifluction. And in sudden mass movement there are four types, right? First one is earth flow, mud flow, landslides and avalanches. Just you got the just basic classification. Now just listen. So here, whenever you listen the term creep and solifluction, that is a slow mass movement. And whenever you listen the term earth flow, mud flow, landslides, avalanche, they are sudden movement. So whenever you listen the term orogeny, slow movement, epirogeny, slow movement, earthquake, sudden movement, volcanoes, sudden movement, tsunami, sudden movement. You got this point? And similarly here, slow movement. Within slow movement, we are having two types. One is creep and solifluction. So here creep meaning, just listen, these are the two areas, and if the movement of the sediments or movement of material takes place from these two places, listen carefully. So movement of material takes place, that material can be rocks or soil or vegetation, VSR. And here also movement of the material can be vegetation, soil or rocks. If the movement takes place from the dry region, then we call creep. If the movement takes place from the wet region, then we call solifluction. You got the difference? So solifluction meaning movement of sediments from the wet region. Movement of sediments from the dry region we call the creep. For example, when you compare Aravalli and Himalayas, so movement of materials from Himalayas we call solifluction because the wet soil. And Aravallis or deserts mainly consider the dry region, and the movement of sediments from the dry region, so we call creep. And solifluction meaning the movement of the materials from the wet region, that we call creep. And solifluction, they comes under slow mass movement. And sudden mass movement, earth flow. Here earth flow meaning, don't say कि movement of the earth is known as earth flow, no. So earth flow meaning large mass of the sediments or large mass of rocks, soil and vegetation will slide down from the high mountains or large mountains, we call earth flow. And the main reason for earth flow is heavy rainfall and less vegetation cover, because if the trees are less, maximum mass will flow. If there is more trees, that tree will become the barrier when the heavy rainfall occurs, and there is a movement of the material will be less, and this earth flow takes place due to heavy rainfall and less vegetation cover. And mud flow, the name itself says mud flow, mud meaning clay, soil. When heavy rainfall occurs, especially from the agricultural land or from the plain areas, maximum soil will be eroded, and that soil will flow as a mud. You might be seen when the heavy rainfall occurs, so that soil will be eroded from the agricultural land, and you will find large depression in the agricultural land because the soil will be eroded, right? When the soil will go along with the running water, that soil will become the mud or it becomes the clay, and that clay will flow along with the water, that we call the mud flow. And mud flow, why mud flow occurs? Again, because of heavy rainfall and because of less vegetation cover, or you can say, so because of it mostly occurs in the plain areas, mud flow. Then landslides meaning very large rocks or the group of large rocks will fall down. You might have seen in the Himalayas, the roads will be blocked by the big rocks because the rocks will fall down, that we call landslides. It mainly and landslide occurs by different reasons. There are many causes for landslides. Heavy rainfall also one of the cause, and presence of steep slope also one of the cause, and developmental activities like road construction, tunnel construction also one of the cause, earthquake also one of the cause. There are and volcanic eruption also one of the cause. There are many causes for landslides. We'll discuss later in detail. So avalanches meaning the sudden movement of large mass of the snow is known as avalanches. You just got the concept here. Okay. So now we'll discuss one by one. First put the write down mass movement. Movement of a mass of movement of the mass of sediments, movement of the mass of sediments or rocks, comma soil and vegetation. Movement of the mass of sediments or rocks, comma soil and vegetation is known as mass movement. Full stop. Next point. Based on speed, there are two types of mass movement. Based on speed, there are two types of mass movement. Right? So we are having two types of mass movement. One is slow mass movement and second one is sudden mass movement. Write down first. So slow mass movement. So based on speed, we are having two types. One is slow mass movement and second one is sudden mass movement. Next point. Slow mass movement and sudden mass movement. First put the heading slow mass movement. And within slow mass movement, we are having two types here, creep and solifluction. Write down both here, creep on left side and solifluction on right side. Creep and solifluction. On left side, creep, and on the right side, solifluction. And write down below creep. Movement of sediments from dry region. Movement of sediments from dry region is known as creep. Movement of sediments from dry region is known as creep. Movement of sediments from dry region is known as creep. Movement of sediments from dry region is known as creep. Right? Full stop. Example. Movement of sediments in desert areas or less rainfall receiving areas. desert areas or less rainfall receiving areas. Movement of sediments in desert areas or less rainfall receiving areas. Less rainfall receiving areas. Right? Okay, full stop. Next, solifluction. Solifluction. Write down. Movement of sediments. Movement of sediments. Movement of sediments from movement of sediments from wet regions. Wet regions. Movement of sediments from wet region. Wet region is known as solifluction. 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 Full stop. Example. It. 1 minute. Example. Movement of sediments. Movement of sediments in more rainfall receiving areas. 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 Done. More rainfall receiving areas. More rainfall receiving areas. Right. Full stop. This is slow mass movement. Now put the heading sudden mass movement. Sudden mass movement. Sudden mass movement. In that, first put the heading earth flow. Earth flow. Earth flow, right? Earth flow. Okay, write down. Movement of larger mass. Movement of larger mass of soil or sediments. Movement of larger mass of soil or sediments and vegetation is known as earth flow. Very important point, is known as earth flow. Okay, what are the causes for earth flow? Write down causes for earth flow. The first important cause, heavy rainfall. Heavy rainfall for longer duration. Heavy rainfall for longer duration. That is one important cause for earth flow. And second one, presence of soft topography. Presence of soft topography of soft sedimentary rocks and loosely packed soil. Soft sedimentary rocks and loosely packed soil. Very important point, loosely packed soil. Third point, developmental activities in mountain and hilly areas. Mountain and hilly areas. Right. Fourth one, deforestation or less vegetation cover. So deforestation or less vegetation cover, very important point. These are the reasons for earth flow, right? So earth flow meaning sudden movement of large mass of sediments and vegetation, we call the earth flow. What are the causes for earth flow? Heavy rainfall for longer duration, right? And even you can mention one more point, the fifth cause, that is a cloud burst. You might have heard this term, it's very important term, and it keeps on coming in the newspaper also. And even UPSC also asked the question many times on the cloud burst. What is cloud burst? Yes, very good. Sudden rainfall in a shorter duration. Here I mentioned longer duration. So cloud burst meaning short duration. A short duration meaning how many time? 20 minutes. He always throws like Narendra Modi ji. Do you know Narendra Modi will throw like many important statements, right? And will justify also later. Okay, good. Listen. So here cloud burst. Cloud burst meaning, listen carefully. So here heavy rainfall in small areas. Listen carefully. And the main reason for such cloud burst is the cumulonimbus clouds. Listen carefully. So here the flat base. Listen carefully. Flat base and curving top. Curving top. So that we call even the cumulonimbus clouds. Cumulonimbus. It's a cumulonimbus. Cumulo meaning vertical. Nimbus meaning dark. Cumulonimbus. So when the cumulonimbus clouds develops, so it gives heavy rainfall in small area in shorter duration of time. In very small area, heavy rainfall occurs. So here, just listen carefully. So in the area of 20 to 30 square kilometer, in this 20 to 30 square kilometer area, if minimum 100 mm rainfall occurs, 100 mm or 10 centimeter rainfall occurs in 1 hour, then it is known as cloud burst. So it's a definition given by IMD, Indian Meteorological Department. So according to Indian Meteorological Department, so your cloud burst meaning around 100 mm or you can say 10 centimeter, 100 mm or 10 centimeter rainfall should takes place in how much area? 20 to 30 square kilometer area in 1 hour, that we call cloud burst. And that cloud burst occurs, if it occurs in the, and mostly the cloud burst occurs in mountain areas only, generally. So because such clouds develops in the mountain areas only, and when the cloud burst occurs in the mountain areas, that causes maximum movement of the sediments, and that we call the earth flow, right? So here cloud burst also, right? One meaning cloud burst. Sudden and heavy rainfall, sudden and heavy rainfall in 20 to 30 square kilometer area, sudden and heavy rainfall in 20 to 30 square kilometer area, sudden and heavy, just add one word, listen, sudden and heavy rainfall of 100 mm, sudden and heavy rainfall of 100 mm in 20 to 30 square kilometer area, sudden and heavy rainfall of 100 mm in 20 to 30 square kilometer area in 1 hour, is known as cloud burst, according to IMD, according to IMD. Don't write RMD, it is IMD. According to IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, according to IMD, right? Okay, full stop. One more point. It occurs, it meaning cloud burst, it occurs due to development of cumulonimbus clouds. Very important, most important, cumulonimbus. It occurs due to development of cumulonimbus clouds. It occurs due to development of cumulonimbus clouds. Cumulo meaning vertical. Nimbus meaning dark. When very dark and vertical cloud develops, so that leads to heavy rainfall. That's why whenever the clouds whenever the sky becomes dark, our parents will say, just come because the clouds sky becoming dark, it leads to heavy rainfall karke, right? So the dark clouds always gives heavy rainfall because they are the rain bearing clouds, the dark clouds. We'll discuss in detail about all the clouds in the climatology chapter. Very important chapter, climatology, right? Okay, so it's a cloud burst. These are the important causes for earth flow. Next one, mud flow. Put the heading mud flow. Mud flow, very important, mud flow. So your mud nothing but clay, right? Okay, listen. So when heavy rainfall occurs, the large quantity of the soil will be eroded, right? And that we call the mud flow. And what are the reasons for mud flow? Same reasons, right? So heavy rainfall for longer duration, presence of soft topography and developmental activities, deforestation, cloud burst. The same causes for the mud flow. Just write down mud flow meaning movement of large quantity of soil, movement of large quantity, very important point, movement of large quantity of soil, movement of large quantity of soil due to heavy rainfall and less vegetation cover, due to heavy rainfall and less vegetation cover, movement of large quantity of or amount of soil due to heavy rainfall and less vegetation cover, generally from plain areas is known as mud flow, right? Mud flow. And one more important cause for mud flow, you can add one more sixth to this point. We are total have 5 and the sixth also you can add here, that is floods. The severe floods also, it's a main reason for mud flow, and even the earth flow also. Severe floods. So when the severe floods occurs, that flood also leads to removal of the materials, right? Mud flow. And in 2013, in the Kedarnath flood, so huge quantity of the soil was eroded, huge amount of the mud was eroded, and that led to that destroy of that Lord Shiva statue also. There was a Lord Shiva statue in the Kedarnath, right? And that there was a damage to that statue also, right? So, but I will show a small clip, a small video of that this one mud flow. Just listen. Just see this video only. 2013. It's a very famous. Just I typed 2013. It came Kedarnath flood. That much important, right? Okay.
2013 में केदारनाथ में आई बाढ़ हिमालय के इतिहास में आई अब तक की सबसे भयानक तबाही थी। बादल फटने के कारण हुई तेज बारिश को इस तबाही का कारण बताया गया था। इस घटना ने उत्तराखंड
So mud flow, huge amount of the soil will flow. That we call mud flow.
5000 से भी ज्यादा लोगों ने अपनी जान गंवाई थी और हजारों लोग बेघर हो गए थे। उनमें से हजारों लोग तो ऐसे
See, huge quantity of mud will flow.
पता नहीं है। आज 2022 में
This is the mud, right? Mud flow.
केदारनाथ में शाम ढल चुकी थी, जैसे मंदाकिनी नदी उफान पर आ गई थी। भारी बारिश और ग्लेशियर्स पिघल जाने की वजह से चोराबाड़ी झील में एक साथ पानी का
MD flow नहीं, mud flow. See, mud flow. Even the rocks also flowing here. So, it's huge quantity of the soil will flow, that we call mud flow. This is mud flow. And if you get the question, what are the causes for the mud flow? Just we have discussed here all the 6 causes. These are the reasons for the mud flow. Mud flow, right? Mud flow. Next point. Next point. Landslide. Landslide. Right. So landslide meaning, so the large rocks, even vegetation also, large rocks, vegetation and soil. So this slides down, that we call landslide. Just listen. So here when the large quantity or large amount of rocks, soil and vegetation, they slides down from the mountain areas or hill areas, we call landslide, right? So just see the small video, then it will be again very easy to understand the concept. Let's see this one small video. Landslide meaning the sudden movement of rocks, soil, vegetation.
From a sudden rock slide in China that nearly crushed this passing driver.
See, the large quantity of the rocks will slide down.
Sent a group of miners sprinting for cover to the shocking moment an entire mountainside collapsed in one fell swoop, and a quarry landslide in Turkey that led to the arrest of several officials. Here are some of the most devastating landslides and rockfalls. Across from them collapsed in dramatic fashion. Thankfully, nobody lived nearby, so they could sit back and enjoy the spectacle without worrying about what was below.
See, the sudden movement of large mass of rocks, even the vegetation, soil.
Soil and loose rocks. The mine the night before. Nobody was near.
So they also they are watching. I say लोग हैं हमारे Indians, right? They'll watch disaster also.
Something about the contrast between the green hillside, 1,000 feet. Disaster. Blocked with large rocks and a cloud of debris.
Okay, so most of the time in the Himalayas and even most of the mountain, when there is a roads in the mountain areas, the roads will be blocked by the landslides only. And especially in the rainy season, most of the roads will be blocked because due to the rainfall, that land will slide easily and the rocks will fall on the roads and the road will be blocked. And most of the travelers will face the problems because there is no any alternative roads also there. Had it is in the plain, we would have taken some other routes, but in the mountain there will be only one route. So they have to remove that sediments, they have to remove that rocks. Otherwise, there will be no any alternative roads for the travelers. Right, very important point. So your landslides meaning sudden movement of large mass of rocks, soil and vegetation. So especially from the mountains and hills, we call the landslides, right? Just have the definition. Just take the definition of this landslide. Sudden movement of sudden movement of large mass of rocks, soil and vegetation generally from mountains and generally from steep sloped mountains and hills, generally from steep sloped mountains and hills by natural and anthropogenic activities, by natural and anthropogenic activities. Is known as landslide. And this is very important topic. You can put here very important, most important. And this question came many times in UPSC mains. So just it's a meaning. And under landslide, listen, just we have to discuss here the causes of landslides, effects of landslides, and even we have to discuss the measures of mitigation of landslide. These are the very important topics are remaining related to landslide, and that we'll discuss in the tomorrow's class, right? We'll stop here, and so tomorrow we'll discuss about what are the causes for landslides, what are the effects of landslides, and even what are the measures of mitigation. What is the meaning of measures of mitigation? Prevention measures, or you can say solution to prevent, or you can say action taken to manage it or to prevent it. That we call the measures of mitigation. That we'll discuss. And this question asked 3 times in last 1 decade. Like in last 10 years, same question repeated 3 times. Once they ask the question, just listen first. Why most of landslides occurs in Himalayas? That was the one. Once they asked the question, I think 2016 they asked this question. So why most of landslides occurs in Himalayas? And in 2018 there was a question. So most of the landslides in India occurs in Himalayas as compared to Western Ghats. Critically analyze. That was the question they asked. So now they are asking with respect to Western Ghats. So here most of the landslides occurs in Himalayas with respect to or as compared to Western Ghats. Its meaning you have to justify why more landslides occurs in Himalayas and why less landslides occurs in Western Ghats. That you have to justify. So that we'll discuss tomorrow, right? Why more landslide occurs in Himalayas and why less landslides occurs in Eastern Ghats or Western Ghats in other part of India, right? So just add a few questions, mains questions. Mains questions. So first question. What do you understand? By the term? What do you understand? By the term? Volcanism. What do you understand by the term volcanism? Full stop. Discuss its components. 150 words, 10 marks. Question number 2. Discuss the causes and types of volcanic eruptions. Or you can say volcanism. Discuss the causes and types of volcanic eruptions. Very important one. And 250 words, 15 marks. Question number 3. Explain the different effects. Explain the different effects or impacts of volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruptions or volcanism, right? So different effects or impacts of volcanic eruptions or volcanism. So 200 words, 12.5 marks. So this is about today's questions, right? Can you take one more question? Fourth question. What do you understand by weathering? What do you understand by the term? What do you understand by the term weathering? And discuss its different types and discuss its different types. Very important questions, right? Okay, so please write the answers for these questions, right? And you can get evaluated by ma'am, or you can send me also, right? I will check your papers if you send to me. Okay, thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye. Dhanyavad, right? Okay. Today they are not missing anything. I think that chat box is off because and they are not able to send the messages. Okay, take it.